Mr. Phil Mikan Show. What were they doing with the gym coach and all that? What was that about? Did I miss something here? Woo. You believe it? I don't know. Mikey, I just heard the news thing, and it said coach 10 years, got rid of the football team, whatever. Where are we going here? I mean, woohoo. This is the Phil Mikan Show, and speaking of where are we going, we are going to be talking, actually, we're talking to the acorn today. We were going to be talking with the oak tree, but he couldn't make it. Larry Pratt was scheduled, and he said, let me pass the ball to my better, and we have his son, Erich. How are you this morning?
Doing great, Phil. How are you?
Just another day in paradise. When was the last time you were called acorn?
I hear it all the time.
Do you really?
I do.
I thought I was being so witty. No.
Well, it still works. Hey, that's okay.
Yeah. And by the way, people, this is Gun Owners of America. Larry Pratt is the executive director. His son is Erich Pratt, and he is the communications director and does a very good job, as does his father. It's basically a lobbying group for those of my audience that are gun owners and perhaps permit holders and people who have a sense of the Second Amendment as a, unalienable as opposed to inalienable. Do we know the difference between the two words?
There are some people that love to debate that, and the Declaration, of course, says
very deliberately they put that word in. Unalienable.
Yeah, spelling changes over the years. The point is these are rights that are not supposed to be taken away. They're not alienable, and I think that's the point.
Right. It's where did I miss the memo when they said it's negotiable now? There are certain rights that we have. One is the right for free speech. In other words, you can't tell me what to say. That one's been impinged a great deal, too, with political correctness. And it's a fine line. It's very similar to what they're trying to do with the right to bear arms or the right to protect yourself. It's not just so much bearing arms, but it's the right to protect yourself is what was talked about. Have things changed that much, Erich?
Well, our rights certainly haven't, but certainly certain elected officials and their views towards rights has changed. I mean, down in D.C., you may remember that a couple months ago a judge ruled that the ban on carrying firearms in the District of Columbia was unconstitutional. Now, he put a stay on that judgment because D.C. was like, please, let us get some emergency legislation passed, and, we'll take care of this ourselves. And so D.C. Police Chief Kathy Lanier spoke last week right before they enacted legislation, and basically her take was, look, living in a high-crime area or the fact that you've been burglarized many times in your home, that's no reason, that gives no justification for you to be able to have a concealed carry permit. This is just simply astounding. So even people who are living in dangerous areas, even people who've themselves been victimized, even that is not good enough cause in the minds of these tyrants. I'd like to know if she'd be willing to live by her own words and give up her gun and walk around.
That's the point. She has a gun, so she can make you give yours up.
And that's what you find by most of these little petty tyrants that want us to give up our guns. Either they themselves have them, or like Michael Bloomberg, they have professional bodyguards that they can afford to pay for, which, of course, the average American citizen can't afford that kind of protection.
Yeah, and Bloomberg and, the guys that he has are, former SWAT guys, former Green Berets, whatever. I mean, but they know how to handle firearms, and they know how to protect their client. And protection is the key. America has always been, at some point, a risky place to be in certain areas. And protection, self-protection, is something that was just a given. And if you did something wrong, they'd either say, yeah, okay, we understand why you did it, or they'd hang you. I mean, it was very simple.
That's right. This right we're talking about 7,000 times a day, people use guns in this country to defend themselves, and that doesn't mean somebody gets shot. It could be simply brandishing the firearm. But what a difference it makes. I'll just give you two stories. One that was successful because the homeowners had a gun. The other one, sadly, not successful because they were unarmed. Down in Texas, this one couple, a guy and his girlfriend, were leaving Austin, Texas, going back home. They were assaulted by 5 guys. His girlfriend was groped all over, and he was mercilessly beaten to a pulp as he tried to intervene and protect her. It's just a heart-wrenching case, and you think in Texas, man, that this guy should have had a gun. But what a difference when a gun is involved in Oklahoma. This guy despite having a protective order against him, he attacked a woman with a knife, was probably intending to rape her or kill her. I mean, she already had a protective order, but obviously those pieces of paper, what's a piece of paper going to do? And it was actually her 11-year-old daughter who grabbed a handgun in the house and shot this guy, causing him to flee. I mean, that's amazing stuff. And of course, liberals will hate that because they'll probably think that the mom should be in jail now that the daughter was able to grab a hold of a firearm. Why wasn't it locked up? Of course, this woman might be dead. Never mind that.
What?
But these are this is what I'm saying, Phil. These are the types of cases, the real cases that occur every day in this country. And what a difference when people either aren't allowed to carry or foolishly choose not to be able to protect themselves.
The thing that I'm getting a sense of is the younger generation. I and your father, I think me more so, am a World War II baby. My father was around when I was born, but within 6 months of my birth, he was drafted and he was off to the Second World War. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was in the Army for almost 3 years. He went in 44 and came out in 43 rather, and came out in 46, 47, like that. He was in the occupation army in Germany. He was there for a full year because he was a late draftee. His point timeout, they had some kind of formula. But he was very conversant in firearms as a citizen. He never carried a gun. He never really wanted a gun, but he understood what was necessary in the safety. When I was a kid using cap guns, he'd say, don't point that at anybody. He was so well trained by the service in terms of what you did and how you used the firearm that it carried over to me. And my parents went and got me a .22 when I was 13 years old because my father said, you should know how to use a firearm. You should know about it. You shouldn't be afraid of it. And that was the attitude of that generation. And then from the hippie movement to where we are now to, it's 3 generations. Guns are something to fear, and that was never the case in this country. Guns were always more or less like harness for horses. It was a tool. A horse can kill you too, but
right.
And horses did kill many people by throwing them off their backs.
Yes. Yeah, good for your parents for the way they raised you. My dad did the same thing. I got my first gun at age 13 as well. But, what a difference, what a de-evolution we have had in terms of the mindset. Now what we've got is cases like, NBC Today show not too long ago had a New York detective, and he was giving advice for how to protect yourself in the home. Of course, never mentioned, well, of course, if you're in New York City, it may be a little difficult anyway to get a firearm, but never even mentioned, because this is a national show, that's a viable, even preferred option. In fact, you know what his advice was? You lock yourself in your room, and if they get into your room, have a can of, wait for it, wasp spray. I mean, can you imagine that 11-year-old girl grabbing the wasp spray to get that killer off his mom? I mean, just the insanity of this. Or can you imagine, recently there's been a couple of mass killings that have been averted by gun owners. One was a doctor in Darby, Pennsylvania. A patient came in shooting up the place, and he was a concealed carry holder, and he used his firearm with a tight group of 3 shots in the chest, incapacitated the killer. But can you imagine if he's reaching in his desk for the wasp spray? I mean, what lunacy we're being told. I'd like to know again if this New York detective would himself advocate that for the NYPD. Hey, if it's such a good idea, make them carry a can of wasp spray, huh?
The question I have is that there are so many people that are into a sedated attitude toward firearms, and nobody is saying that firearms are something to be taken for granted. On the contrary, anybody that uses, and the most responsible act a person will have, one of the most responsible acts a person has, is carrying a gun. When you decide that you're going to wear a gun, firearm, handgun, you better know what you're doing. You don't put it on unless you know how to take it and disarm it and load it blindfolded. And that kind of thing. I'm maybe exaggerating, but you better be very familiar with what you're doing. You don't go play in a concert the piano unless you're a concert pianist. You've got to know how to do it. You've got to know the music. You've got to know the instrumentation. And many people think they can just take a gun, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about proficiency and protection. Some people do martial arts, some people do boxing, but anybody can do a firearm.
Yeah, and it starts where your parents started, and that is even when you're running around the house with your cap gun and instilling those firearm safety principles. And I think, and I actually do that with my kids as well. They like to play with Nerf guns and things like that. And there's a time when they have their shoot 'em up games, and so that's okay. But otherwise, if they're not allowed to point at somebody. And again, it's instilling that principle of you never point a gun unless you want to shoot it. You never point a gun at an object or a person or in anybody's direction unless you intend for that, because you always have to assume the gun is loaded and that it could accidentally go off. I mean, you just have to train that, instill that. And, and I've been around, I will say, I mean, it's not... most gun owners are very, very responsible. There's been a couple guys who scare me the way they handle their firearms. They carrying firearms concealed and they whip it out to show people, and not mindful of where the barrel's pointed. But I think most people really take on that responsibility, Phil, that you were saying, and take that training seriously.
Yeah, you better. You better, because this is a very unsympathetic world that we are carrying firearms in. If you are, if you make a mistake, and there's no such thing as an accident, it's now called manslaughter, or they got all kinds of terms for it. If you go and make a bad comment to somebody, they can come in and take your guns, and they do. I mean, we see cases of that all the time where a protective order is one thing, but if you have firearms, they'll come and take it away.
Yeah, well, consider what's going on down in New York right now. Based on their SAFE Act, now information can be put into the NICS background check system, people's names who have visited psychiatrists, and just based on a single determination alone by the psychiatrist, their names can anonymously be put into the background check system. And so recently it was discovered that over 34,000 names, in other words, 34,000 people have lost their gun rights without due process. In other words, no court, no judge, no jury. They've been put in there anonymously. Even some mental health experts have said, this sounds extraordinarily high, this number. But, this is the thing that anti-gun liberals love. They don't care that, this is some sort of pre-crime where we're trying to divine who's going to be, like in the movie Minority Report, right? We're going to
before they do it, we'll catch them and put them in jail because they were gonna.
Exactly right. Yeah, we're going to figure out who's going to do it, rather than, the whole issue of inalienable rights that we were talking about earlier is you don't lose your rights unless you forfeit your rights by committing some type of heinous crime. But liberals, the anti-gun liberals, they just love applying this pre-crime idea to the Second Amendment. I wonder how they would feel if they were anonymously added to a list without due process, where they start losing many of their rights. How about if we came and said, we think you're dangerous, you lose your right to privacy, no Fourth Amendment protection, so you can be stopped and frisked on the street. Well, hey, wait a minute. Actually, that already happens, and don't the liberals hate that? It's this selective outrage where when their ox is being gored, that's unconstitutional. Even though you could make an argument that, hey, maybe it's going to reduce crime rates. But no, they want to go by the book. But when it comes to the Second Amendment, well, anybody we even suspect might be dangerous, we're going to take away their guns. So now over 34,000 people in New York have their rights taken away. And even some of the these mental health experts who aren't necessarily pro-gun are a little bit astounded at how high that number is.
Yeah, that sounds like an agenda. Let me go to break, Eric. I'll be right back, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the firearms dilemma that Americans are going through right now. Love it, hate it. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Should we do it? We'll be right back. This is the Phil Mikan Show. We have Erich Pratt from the Gun Owners of America, not to be confused with Chris Pratt. Is that your brother-in-law or something, or your cousin?
I don't even know who that is.
Oh, gosh. That was a very, very successful movie. Boy, I feel like I'm a young kid. I love it. Thank you so much. That was the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a smash.
That's Chris Pratt. Okay.
Yeah. And I enjoyed that movie. In fact, I have to tell you, I went and saw it twice, and I don't usually do that. But
you are a young kid.
Yeah.
My kids saw it and loved it. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, no, you got to see it. It's a fun movie. It really, and not only that movie did something that many try to achieve and don't. And in essence, the personalities of the characters overpowered who and what they were biologically and genetically. For example, one of the main characters and kind of the aggressor, and it was a raccoon alien. It was an animal that had extreme intelligence and dexterity like a human being and was very smart, and he was the genius of this 4 or 5 man group. Another one was somebody that was blue and came from another world. That's the fun of having these alienable or alien cultures. You can get guys that come in that look all kinds of ways. So as a result, you become colorblind and you become kind of blurred to configurations, and it is true universalism that you're looking at, and I think that's what liberals do. I think they're trying to find out if they can find an intelligent raccoon somewhere and give it the same rights that we have, or and they play on the inequities and the kind of insecurities of people. I'm not quite sure what. It started out. I started out, and your father probably did too. We started out as Kennedy Democrats, and then it went away from there. After the assassination and everything, we all started taking a second look at what was going on, and we were all very much into civil rights. We were all very much into, and then it got fragmented. It got shattered. But the right to protect yourself should not go away, and I'm not quite sure why the liberals are so upset about the right to bear arms. Do you have a feeling about that? Do you have an understanding of that? What's the control?
Well, I think it fits into their nanny state worldview, which is we are going to take care of you from cradle to grave. And you see that in many ways, in many other issues, but of course there's no greater way of taking care of the people than we will be there to protect you, which is ironic because that's a total lie. The courts have consistently said that the police do not have the duty to protect individuals, only society at large. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, but court after court after court has basically repeated that almost verbatim. And so whenever there's gross dereliction of duty, where let's say 911 has been called and the police failed to show up in a timely fashion, and they've been sued, the result is always the same. The police are not duty-bound to protect you as an individual. Well, and that's what makes this so particularly heinous. Places like Washington, D.C., and New York and Connecticut and Colorado, where they're seriously infringing upon people's ability to protect themselves, is, on the one hand, they're limiting your options to defend yourself, but then on the other hand, if you were to ever sue them because they didn't protect you against violence, well, then you already know what the answer is going to be. They're not duty-bound to protect you.
Protect and serve. Did I miss something? What did I miss? I'm not quite sure. That's kind of like newspeak, isn't it?
It's exactly what that is. I was just going to say that. It's exactly newspeak, yeah, because if you really push it and you take it to court, you'll see very quickly that, well, they're not really there to protect you individually, only society at large. And of course, then you scratch your head and you say, well, what
am I? Yeah. Yeah. What am I part of? Am I part of the Galaxy Alien Group, or? Yeah, no.
It keeps coming back to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the successes of that movie is, yeah, it does. It answers and it shows the kind of idiosyncrasies of living organisms, human or alien, and it shows, evil, and it shows good, and it shows this, and it shows that. It shows heroism, and it shows people that are basically honorable, and people who will make sacrifice. And all these people aren't necessarily blonde, blue-eyed people. Some of them are raccoons, and they're still people. They're still part of the community, and an active part, and like that. And that's what I think, there's a point to this, what I think we kind of believe, those of us who think, the right, the unalienable right is the right to process and bring people into your community and protect yourself. And we bring people into our community because they have proven their worth to us, or we like them, or they are a productive part of that community. And we feel like we're in the same boat. It makes no difference if they're a raccoon or if they're blue. It makes no difference.
All right.
And that's what bewilders me. And I think you're right in terms of saying it's the kind of fraternity. We're going to protect you. We're going to give you just. And it's also a tremendous, insidious quest for power.
Yeah, I had to laugh listening in the break. Joe Courtney, his ad, talking about getting it done for Connecticut. Well, that he certainly has when it comes to your Second Amendment rights, because he has not been a defender of the right to keep and bear arms, voted against the people's right every opportunity they have. And, people can, in fact, go to our website. Well, we've got two. One is our regular site at gunowners.org, but if people go to GOA PVF, which stands for Gun Owners of America Political Victory Fund, so GOAPVF.org, they can see ratings of all the races in the Congress. But you'll see that Joe Courtney gets an F, and his opponent, Kavanaugh, has an A-. So he's the definite better candidate on Second Amendment issues in that race. But I think it's really important that people look at these ratings and they circulate them around so that they can see, who's really been with us. We see this all the time. That come election time, they want to sound like, oh, we've been there with you. I've been there voting for your rights. We see this all over the country, and sometimes it's laughable. Like in Louisiana, Mary Landrieu is in a really tight race. In fact, she's behind now. This could be an incumbent who loses her seat. And but she has an F rating with Gun Owners of America. So that, she's been with the president most of the time on his gun agenda, about 99% of the time. But now she's down there campaigning, saying, I've been voting to defend your Second Amendment rights. So, we went down there and blanketed her state with the truth, just pointing out the vote after vote. I mean, she had a dozen anti-gun votes in 2013 alone. There was a lot of action last year. I mean, the president and the Senate, Harry Reid, was trying to cram gun control down our throats. We were able to fend them off, but people like Mary Landrieu was going along with the flow, supporting the president, supporting Harry Reid's agenda, and now, though, she's trying to pretend to be pro-gun. We shouldn't be surprised. We know they do this, but it just amazes me how each election cycle, they've been in Washington cutting deals, voting against their rights, but now they're the superhero champion. I was there with you. I'm bringing it home to Connecticut or wherever it is. Yeah. That's why you have groups like Gun Owners who puts the truth out there and actually lists the votes so people can see for themselves how their representatives or senators voted.
This is a question I have for you. You probably have a better sense of it than I would, but Connecticut, and this is one of the concerns that I have, and it's been this way on and off for the last 40 years, but Connecticut now, for the first time in a long time, has a totally Democratic state government, totally. The executive is Democrat, and the House and the Senate are Democrat. And the federal delegation is federal, or Democrat. So you have all of our 5 congressmen are Democrats, our 2 senators are Democrats. The legislature, both the House and Senate, are majority Democrat, and our governor is Democrat. And I think we're in real trouble. Courtney is a Democrat, and actually you speak about Courtney. Courtney is proven to be a pretty effective congressman, but for that gun control bill, he followed the pack. And that's the party politics that concerns me. Because Joe Courtney has been a decent, and he's been a really pretty good representative for that district and what their expectations, the district's expectation are for the representative. But when it came to the healthcare, the Obamacare bill, the healthcare bill, he voted for it. When it came to trying to deal with firearms and more control and so on, he voted for it. The delegation in the state, the Democrats almost in mass, and that was an emotional vote for this state because of Sandy Hook, because of those children that were mowed down. I mean, it's beyond belief what happened in terms of the event that triggered it. But when you sit there and you look at the event, you can understand the emotional reaction of the parents and citizens and so on and so forth. And everybody, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, all of a sudden you could not buy firearms by mail order. That was done away with. And each one of these cataclysmic or kind of emotional events that we had with firearms or have, they cut into the rights. They reinterpret the population's rights even more. It's mind-boggling. But the Democrats controlling the state is scary. How many other states are in our kind of lockstep?
Very few. Hawaii would come to mind, but where you're talking a total domination like that, very few. In fact, there maybe Rhode Island, but I'm not even sure there. There's very few, Phil. But I suppose there's some light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, from what I've seen in terms of the polling, Malloy may be going down next month. So, and a lot of it, I think, has to do, I'm not up there, so I don't know all the issues that he's facing, but certainly, we've heard from gun owners, and we've seen this, that is a big issue that's even motivated a lot of Democrats to want to cross over and vote against him, which, by the way, interestingly enough, that's happened all over the country. For example, in Colorado, they passed very stringent gun controls after the Aurora shooting, and also it came after the Sandy Hook shooting. But what's interesting there is that they have a recall law, and so they've already recalled 3 senators, and these were senators from very, very Democrat districts, and in fact one was the Senate president, and so they recalled the first 2, and then the third one they later got enough signatures, and she figured, well, the writing's on the wall, so she went ahead and resigned. But so here, 3 very Democrat districts, they've already booted their sitting legislator who voted for gun control out of office, and this is the type of thing that we see that the right to keep and bear arms. A lot of times people peg it as it's just a Republican issue and not a Democrat issue. It's true that the Democrat Party platform does speak to wanting to impose all kinds of gun controls. That is true. But when you get down to the man in the street, there are a lot of pro-gun Democrats who do not want their guns taken away. Very interesting poll by Fox News. It was 60-some% of the people said that they would not give up their guns if they, even their so-called assault weapons if Congress banned them. What was interesting was that a majority of self-proclaimed liberals wouldn't give up their guns either. So, this is a real problem that the Democrats at the national level have, where when they go too far, there's always this reaction. In fact, President Bill Clinton said many times the reason he lost control of the Congress in 1994 was because of the gun control legislation that he signed.
Yeah, not only signed, but advocated. That's the key. I mean, it's Obama. Obama's star started to dim when he was really pushing and questioning the Second Amendment and questioning the right to own firearms and giving the impression of draconian kind of provisions as far as firearms. That's when people started saying, whoa, wait a minute. And that was one of them. And then other things started. But no, I think it's a very much with the American public. It's a right that many people feel is a right. I mean, this is something, it's like saying you can't get together with 4 people and talk politics in the cafeteria. You can do that. It's called freedom of speech. You can't throw firebombs in the cafeteria, but you most certainly can do that. Let me do my break, and when I come back, we'll talk a little bit more about rights. Inalienable as opposed to unalienable. You've got to tell me the difference. See if you can go to the dictionary. I'll be right back. This is the Phil Mikan Show. We have Erich Pratt, the Director of Communications for Gun Owners of America. He is with us today, and very happy to have you here, Erich. You guys have always been very supportive of us in terms of coming on and giving us your time as far as the expertise is that I feel you really are on the top of what's going on in terms of the legislation. You're a lobbying group as well as a kind of a trade organization. Is that correct?
Actually, a lobbying group, grassroots lobbying group. We have just about 1 million members and activists, and so that's really where our strength lies, is in lobbying and generating the grassroots movement. I mean, that's what ended up killing gun control last year. NPR said that it was GOA that flooded the phone lines on Capitol Hills days before the Senate vote. The New York Times said that it was GOA that was successful in freezing senators, especially Republican senators who were tempted to cross over and join Democrats and support the Obama agenda. But it wasn't anything that we were doing in the halls of Congress. It's that our strategy all along has been to raise up the grassroots and alert them when their rights are under attack and get them flooding the phone lines, get them deluging congressional desks with postcards, things like that. TPM magazine said that Democrats blame gun owners of America for gun control setback. So again, it's really the power of the grassroots, and so that's what we do. We've been doing it for almost 40 years, and we use our website at gunowners.org, our Facebook at Gun Owners, and our email alert list. In fact, if people go to our website at gunowners.org, it's free. They can sign up for email alerts, and hopefully we'll continue to affect change in the state of Connecticut and elsewhere as well.
The Obama failure as far as, because he was looking, and again, he was trying to move in on that wave of anti-gun feeling after Sandy Hook. And Sandy Hook and Aurora took place in the same year and were pointed to as just, awful things to have had happen, which they were.
They were.
Yeah, I'm not minimizing that or sitting there and saying it's a mind-boggling awful. I mean, it's something nobody, I think, could imagine. You wouldn't even be able to make a movie out of it. I mean, it's not doable, and yet they happened. The reality was very much there. But Obama was very upset. I mean, you could see when he was sitting there chastising Congress that, you guys, you were supposed to do this. That was the beginning of his armor kind of rusting up.
Yes, and he has since then said his biggest frustration in his 6 years of being at the White House has been not in getting gun control enacted. And then just a couple of days ago, Attorney General Eric Holder said the same thing. And, I take that as a badge of honor. We're very happy to have caused their biggest frustrations, both of them saying that this was their biggest frustration, not getting gun control passed. And, and part of our strategy, Phil, was just refusing to compromise, because there was pressure to compromise and say, well, let's water down the bills and, everybody can support something that's not quite as bad as GOA.
That's kind of like boiling a frog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and it's what we were talking about earlier. What is a right? A right is something that is God-given. It is inalienable or unalienable. It can't be taken away. It can't be limited or denied unless you have committed a crime where you forfeit your rights. And isn't it interesting that the Second Amendment, above all the other rights mentioned in our Constitution and Bill of Rights, is the only one that really picks up that theme of an inalienable right by saying that this right shall not be infringed. That's the whole concept of an unalienable right, is that the government can't limit or deny it or put a background check on it or a waiting period or a license or a permit. All these things are basically telling citizens you have to get permission from the government in order to exercise your rights. I mean, what other right would we tolerate that with? Should we be screening husbands before marriage so that make sure they're not going to be wife beaters? Are we going to, ironically, we do see that from time to time, like that Houston mayor who wanted to screen all the sermons there.
Yeah, I read that and I said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, what is this?
But see, that's the mentality of a tyrant.
Well, that's a pretty stupid mayor. I mean,
well, I'll give you that too.
I mean, what? I mean, that's moxie. That's what you call audacity. That's what you call simplicity of mind. There are lots of things I want to say about it, but I don't dare say it on the air. It's mind-boggling that somebody would sit there and say, "Okay, we're going to approve of your sermons." And I read that and I said, "Oh, they're gonna stomp this out quickly." But where have we gotten to that somebody would even think of doing that?
See, and that's the whole point, that it starts with one right, and it, like leaven, it leavens through the whole loaf and into all the other interpretation of the other rights, and that is, if they're not really God-given rights, then that means they're mere privileges, which the government can take at whim. That's the exact thing, by the way, we're fighting in the courts of Connecticut, because we're challenging the gun ban there in a case, Show versus Malloy. And, Connecticut the state is arguing that, well, the ban is necessary to protect the police and further public safety. And they say, well, that burden is not an unreasonable burden. The state wants to engage in a balancing test and say, well, you've got to balance rights against safety, et cetera, et cetera. And our argument is, but the Constitution doesn't allow for that, because the Second Amendment says this right shall not be infringed. So it doesn't matter how Well, what kind of safety benefit you think you're going to get from this, which, by the way, just to comment on that for a moment, I mean, we were talking about these dreadful shootings in Aurora and in Sandy Hook, and isn't it interesting that both of those shootings occurred in gun-free zones? In fact, Purdue University did a study and found that in going back all the way to 1950, all but 2 public mass shootings occurred in gun-free zones. And why shouldn't they? I mean, why? You don't see people generally who want to shoot up a place go to a gun show or a police station, right? No. In fact, interestingly, at the Aurora Theater, James Holmes had actually scoped it out ahead of time. There were 7 theaters within 20 miles of his apartment. He didn't go to the closest one. He didn't go to the biggest one. He went to the only theater of the 7 which had no guns signs posted, and he had even taken pictures. In other words, he'd done his homework, and that's the thing with shooters. If they want to create mass damage, that's why they don't go to a police station. That's why they go somewhere where guns are banned, where they're going to, because they don't care about breaking the law, they're going to be the only one with a gun. And that's ultimately the problem, that these bans don't further public safety. It does quite the opposite. It makes people mandatory victims.
It kind of compels the wicked and crazy to take advantage of it. Let me do my last break, and when we come back, we'll do a summary. And I think I'm going to join the GOA. I think I'm going to send in my contribution or fee or whatever. I'm going to do that. We'll be right back.
Remember, previous programs are archived at philmikan.com.
A performance venue that is home to 220 shows a year must be doing something right. That's the CATE, the Katharine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center, 300 Main Street in Old Saybrook. In just 4 years, this intimate 250-seat theater has become one of the best and most respected entertainment locations in the Northeast. Performances at the CATE are as rich and varied as those of her namesake. From Ricky Lee Jones to Melissa Manchester, the Connecticut Ballet to Madeline and the Bad Hat, Roger McGuinn to John Mayall. There really is something for everyone at the CATE. You may also enjoy performances from The Met in HD on the big screen. And classic Katharine Hepburn movies are shown as well, giving old and new fans alike a glimpse of one of the great actresses of our time. Experience the CATE for yourself, and you'll see why it's become a mainstay. Find out what's coming up at thecate.org or call 860-510-0473. The Katharine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center, Main Street, Old Saybrook. Only the best.
It's time to clean. Middletown Rug and Carpet Cleaning in Higginham, Connecticut cleans rugs from all over the world. When you want a company with the best reputation, call Middletown Rug and Carpet Cleaning. After all, customers have been trusting them to clean the finest Oriental and area rugs since 1962. With weekly pickup and delivery service throughout Connecticut, Middletown Rug and Carpet Cleaning also strives for convenience. Or if you prefer, bring your items in. There's a 15% discount to all walk-in customers. That's Middletown Rug and Carpet Cleaning on Route 154 in Higginham, Connecticut. Middletown Rug and Carpet Cleaning also cleans couches, chairs, love seats, wall-to-wall. They do it all. For more information on Middletown Rug and Carpet Cleaning, visit their website at rugcleaningct.com or give them a call at 860-345-RUGS today. That's rugcleaningct.com or 860-345-7847. Middletown Rug and Carpet Cleaning. It's time to clean.
Hi, I'm Paul Formica, owner of Flanders Fish Market, first selectman of the town of East Lyme, and your candidate for state senate. With your support, I will bring to Hartford the problem-solving skills of an entrepreneur, the fiscal experience of a small-town leader, and the belief that getting the job done is more important than politics. Please help me put ideas into action by voting Formica for Senate in November. Thank you. I'm Paul Formica, and I approve this message.
Did you know the best source of local news and information in central Connecticut is right at your fingertips? Check out NewBritainHerald.com and BristolPress.com wherever you are. The e-edition gives you access to the entire contents of the paper the last thing at night or the first thing in the morning. If it's happening in your community, it's in the Herald and the Press. Call 860-225-4608 for more information. That's 860-225-4608 for the Herald and the Press, your community newspapers.
The
It's the Phil Mikan Show. We have Erich Pratt with us this morning, the Communications Director for Gun Owners of America. Again, I want to thank you for being with us this morning, Erich. You brought it was a good show. Like I said, call you the Acorn.
Thanks, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
You got to tell me in terms of what you think is happening. Everything's quiet right now in terms of people making obvious legislative moves because everybody's trying to get reelected. So we're not going to see any kind of aggressiveness probably until the first of next year with the seating of a new Congress and Senate and so on and so forth. There's a renewal of seats and seeing how the juggling ends up. This attack, I don't see this attack on the Second Amendment going away. Are you seeing any kind of public scrutiny improving or increasing or anything like that?
I do. And, Fox News did an analysis last night showing that if the elections were held yesterday, we would be looking at 53 Republican senators as opposed to just 45. So we would have a new majority leader. Harry Reid would be out. And, not to say that means we've died and gone to heaven, but there's obviously, you spoke to an increased scrutiny. And a lot of these incumbents who've been winning time and time again, like Landrieu and others, are now Landrieu in Louisiana, are now about to be thrown out on their ear. And I think this is wonderful because you might, you were mentioning before the break how the president was really upset when the Senate voted down his gun control, and Joe Biden said there's going to be a political price to pay, that those who opposed gun control are going to lose their seats. And in fact, what we're seeing, it's just the opposite, that those that were supporting the gun control agenda, it looks like they're the ones that are going to be losing their seats. And, we've already talked about Landrieu in Louisiana, but we've got Udall in Colorado, Begich in Alaska.
Yeah, it looks like the governor of Colorado, it looks like Beaupre has a real good shot to take Hickenlooper out.
Yes, and Hickenlooper, of course, is the one who signed that very draconian gun ban, which much like Connecticut's. And since then, he's tried to run from it. He said, well, his staff had promised somebody, and so that's why he signed it. And when there was a lot of connections in the legislation, a lot of similarities to draft legislation that Michael Bloomberg has pushed around the country, and so he was asked how much contact did he have with Bloomberg, and he said, I've never talked to the man. Well, it turned out that was a bald-faced lie, and yet the sheriffs, who were very concerned about that legislation and wanted to talk to him, he refused to meet with them. So he wouldn't meet with his own sheriffs in the state, and yet he was willing to talk and assumably discuss gun control with Michael Bloomberg, but then later deny it. That's the crazy thing that, hey, look, if you're going to if you're going to sign legislation that's going to limit our rights, then just be a man and say, yeah, I signed it, and I
believe in it. I think it's something that's really bad, and I think it's something that we need to scrutinize. Yeah, it's called standing up for a belief system, and I think that's what a lot of people are seeing, and that's. We're starting to act as a population saying, well, that's politics, and that's not honesty, though. There's no integrity in it. It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, and it, obviously it irritates people, but it's coming front and center now. We've been Gun Owners of America making a big deal of this, and so have others, and I think it's going to cost them politically, thankfully. And so we're going to have a much different atmosphere come January. So back to your question, and that's a good thing because, Harry Reid and the Senate did away with the filibuster for judges, and they have just been packing the courts. I mean, kind of like Roosevelt days, right? I mean, packing the courts with far left liberal judges. And sadly, that's going to be a legacy, even after Obama's gone, that we're going to have to deal with for years.
We've been there before. This is a very resilient country, and the population always kind of goes back to an American text and tone. No matter where they come from, they always turn into Americans after 3 generations. And that's the hope that we have. I want to thank you for being with us, Erich.
Thank you, Phil, for having me on. It's been great.